All right. Are we heard? Are we seen?
Are we seen? That's what I've always wanted. Isn't that what all of
That's
us
that's a haunting question to
to
start
feel
with.
to feel heard and seen?
Yep.
That sounds like a Becky Chambers book, to be heard and seen. Um,
Ollo,
it, yeah.
sorry.
Uh,
Ollo, do you want to say the good words that you had uh, planned?
You want to do it into an introduction?
Yeah.
Sure. Hello, everyone. We're live. Uh, Hello. If you're here, there's a very strong chance you know who. Wait, this way? Other way?
Other way.
That way. That way. There's a very strong chance you know who these two are. You may not know who I am. My name is Ollo Clark. I am, yes, a book doer. That's about right. Can't think of a better way to put it, which is why I'm not a word doer. Uh, I am the creative lead and lead writer on Blood, Rum and Thunder, a new 5e pirate Kickstarter that is entered our final week today. We might have 6 days left. We might have 7 days left. We will be doing our final 4 days at Gen Con. Myself and Mike, the director of the company, E-Plan Games, Escape Plan Games, will be there.
Mike says 7 days.
7 days. Mike, hey, hello, Mike. Glad you're here. Thank God. That's why I'm not in charge of that stuff. This beautiful artwork behind me, you may recognize the pen and inkmanship of Julia herself.
Oh,
Julia
wow.
is our illustrator for the entire book. She's incredible. You know that. That's why you're here. Um, I am so incredibly honored to be here with these two remarkable creatives. Pat, thank you so much for the honor of getting involved with our little book. Uh, what's going to happen today is Pat is going to like make a piratical sausage in front of your very eyes.
oh,
Uh,
mm, it
and
got
you're here because you want to see how the sausage is made. Um,
a piratical sausage.
It.
Boy, that is a great. You say you're not a word doer.
um, that's what we're doing. So, Pat is going to make for us one of our pirate legends for the book. What is a pirate legend? I will get to that in just a second. Um, so, but because that is what is happening, we won't be taking any suggestions from the chat for what's going to go in the book because we wouldn't be able to fit all of your names into the thank you column at the beginning. If any of you want to ask any creative questions about the book or any questions about the campaign, I'll do my very best to answer them without spoiling anything. Julia, if you don't mind keeping an eye on chat for those.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Um, so, what are pirate legends and what are we looking for Pat's help for today? In the campaign, the players are press ganged into a disguised pirate ship on behalf of one of the governments of two nations that spanned the Allium Sea, Talagra and Castigia. Two countries that, in a sort of Gulliver's Travels Lilliputian way, are almost identical, and that's why they hate each other. They have been at naval war for centuries. The open waters between them are the sites of countless battles every month. Um, However, Castigia, we are told, is winning. Talagra is to deliver a large payment of surrender under the table to save face. This delivery of surrender cannot be given aboard a Talagran vessel for obvious reasons to do with pride. So what is happening is that payment is being delivered across the sea, sotto voce, aboard a fake pirate ship through the pirate-infested waters of the Thorns, a string of pirate islands that neither Talagra nor Castigia has been bothered to control for 100 years. The players will therefore get to be as piratey as they want and do whatever it takes to get this package from A to B in a Blues Brothers faction-ridden swing from the rigging adventure of their own making. So
That's a good pitch, my
So,
dude.
so,
that's what by the end of the book, I want everyone to be in the final 20 minutes of the Blues Brothers. Ships piling on top of each other. Everyone's trying to
Wow.
chase down what they're doing.
Wow. See, now that is, hey everybody out there in TV land, uh, that is a great way to do a pitch. I once heard that one of the reasons David Bowie was a success working to create the music he created is that when he described what he wanted to the people he was working with, he wouldn't use musical terms. He would say things like, I want this to feel like a Gothic cathedral. And so, like, congratulations, you just pulled a Bowie, which I think is very appropriate.
Is there any higher compliment?
Right?
Also, Pat, I mean, you're the king of doing those. Like, I'll hear, I want it to look like Goku said it, I'm like, got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, I've stolen that for my art direction. One of the few things that I can say, because if you can do something, for a while, I'm like, well, I do it with Nate, but that's me working with Nate. That might not be art direction. Then I realized, oh, I can do it with Julia. I've done it with I can do art direction, after all these years. But yeah, I lean heavily on that because I don't know art terms. And that's great because if I use art terms, I'm going to misuse them. But we're both on the same page when I say Gothic Cathedral. Or, again, Blues Brothers, something outside the pirate genre is a great way to reference a mood. Yeah.
I have avoided pirate literature and media for the last year as I've tried to do this because I want to influences from elsewhere. Like, we all want to play a fun pirate story, but we all don't want to play the same pirate story. So
and I think, and here, this first off, I will happily rabbit hole this conversation, but I don't think we are, because this is what is one of the things that I'm good at, is because you'll note, everybody, he didn't say, oh, I always wanted to do a pirate story, so I've never consumed pirate anything. No, you have to know it real well, and then you have to kind of set it aside if you're going to do a certain sort of creation that doesn't just feel like a bad mimeograph. Oh boy, nobody knows what that is. A bad Xerox. Does anyone still Xerox?
Is it mimeograph microfiche?
It's like it actually a mimeograph. Oh my God, you really don't know. Nobody. Oh no, it's.
Oh no.
It was a machine. You would turn the crank on before Xerox machines, and all the old schools had it. I can smell the weird ink. It would replicate something. It would be kind of a purplish color. But what I'm saying is
Pirate mimeograph.
Pirate mimeograph. There we go. But that's what I want to do here. Is I never want to do the cliche thing. But you got to know what the cliche thing is if you're going to avoid it. You can't. Yeah, ignorance is not the way. And I remember for Pacific Rim, I ended up watching a bunch of documentaries about, not a bunch, but like I watched movies with Mikey. I watched it with my boys. We talked about the cultural context. And then we watched something where Del Toro, in there, he's been a geek for giant robots for forever. But in the writer's room, in development, in art direction, it was forbidden to reference any like Robotech, Evangelion, any of the classic anime, any Gundam, anything. You could not reference it because it's easy, it's fast, but then you're gonna look like that. You're gonna do that. You're gonna be that, and you want to be your own thing. So I want my pirate to be my own thing.
Excellent.
So, what I want to, and I'm sorry, I jumped in here because I got excited.
No, all good. Let me finish explaining to them what
Please.
pirate legends are, and then we can
that.
move on. So, in addition to the story, we have currently 3 pirate legends, which are high CR pirate captains and ships and crews, each written by a different guest writer, that are distinct from the story but not the world. So the DM GM can drop them in wherever they like to make you, the player's life, harder or easier. Harder or easier because it interacts with something we're developing called a crossbones roll, which allows the player, say, your DM describes a ship coming over the horizon. You recognize the flag. You know that this is the great ship Lollipop. In that moment, that's going in now. I've thought of that.
That's very good.
In that moment, a player can say, I want to make a crossbones roll. And what that does, depending on whether it's high or low, no advantage, no nothing, you can't re-roll, it will establish your history with that captain then and there in that moment. So if you roll high, you fought back to back as deckhands for countless years, your godfather to his children, your godfather to his child. He's going to recognize you as an old friend. If you roll low, you robbed him years ago, and he's been chasing you ever since. So it's high risk, high reward. And then you're back in it, and you have to deal with the situation. So these are the pirate legends. They are, I hope, not a straight fight. If we say they turn up, you fight them, something's boring has happened. But they are powerful entities floating around the sea that may or may not have an impact on your table, and in a very different way. Current
sort of like folk heroes, semi-mythic, like not
a Robin Hood,
like a Robin Hood, not Odin, but maybe
exactly
a little bit more like Paul Bunyan. Paul Bunyan is America's version of like the closest we get to Robin Hood
sort of thing. Turning up in other people's, or very easy to turn up in someone else's story.
Right.
A very contained history, and exact folk hero, villain, anti-hero, totally up to you. Cool. We currently have 3, with a 4th depending on a stretch goal. Our 3 writers currently are Ginny Loveday of MomoCon. She is a DM's Guild best-selling writer, Steam Forged Games. She's done stuff for WotC. Ron Ogden is our 2nd writer, the illustrious DM of the Dungeon Run, actor, improviser, and very soon to be a dad. He and Heather are expecting very soon, so we send all our love to Ron. And our 3rd writer is Todd Stashwick of the Nerd Circus, Progcore. Julia could talk a little bit about that at some point.
Yeah.
And then something called Star Trek Pecons. I don't really know.
Pecons?
Those are our current 3. We also hopefully have Abu Salim joining us, who is an actor you might recognize from Raised by Wolves on HBO. He's currently in House of the Dragon. He's the voice of Bayek in Assassin's Creed Origins. He's started his own video game company, Surgeon Studios. He's currently, or maybe just finished on Critical Role. The man is smashing it, and I would be fascinated to see what he'll come up with us for. But we can't get there until we get to 30k. So, Kickstarter is live for 6 more days. Go and have a follow if you're interested. And this is where we introduce Pat.
So, what I'll say here is, you'll notice the other sort of cameos or guest stars or other writers are coming in and writing something. I am not, partly because I've got to put my writing energy elsewhere. It is a sort of limited resource, unfortunately, but more importantly, I don't want to screw up anyone else's book by being slow or not being able to produce at the level that I would like to, or the speed that I'd like to. But I can come up with ideas all day. Speaking of ideas, though, you mentioned you had sort of now, and I don't want to misquote it. Okay, it's Blood, Rum, and Thunder. I was going to get it out of order. Also, Julia, what's the rule for your stream? How PG are we here?
Oh, not. Here's the thing.
Great.
Usually I'm rambling by myself. That's why I'm like taking a back seat right now. I'm like, oh my god, I don't need to talk. This is lovely. I don't need to fill a void. left by no one. No, this has been lovely. Yeah, my only rules, I mean, I think rules pop up before you chat for the first time. Generally, most people here are regulars, and they're chatting and making jokes with one another. We have a dad joke command. Like, that's basically all that happens here. Just be polite, be nice. That's it, but lots of fucks, shits, whatever. Just let them fly.
So, I was gonna say, for your final week, here, this one's for free, right? If you don't run a promo thing during your final week, called rum sodomy in the hash to find a good hashtag, that strikes me as PR gold right there. Although maybe not quite the mood you're looking for.
Thanks, Pat. I think we've got everything we need. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Goodbye. Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And this is the point at which he realizes he's made a terrible mistake. So, how about this? There are, for me, I think everybody enjoys a little bit of piracy, in their storytelling. I've never been a huge aficionado or anything like that, but and you know what? If you think of a pirate these days, who do you think of? It is Johnny Depp. And part of that is just media saturation, right? Because there are so many movies, but that's not just it. Because, and this is a great way to again demonstrate, to do something different, do something familiar in a different way. Depp is such a weird pirate, because like if he tried to be Errol Flynn, oh Jesus Christ, that's dated for me, right? Errol Flynn is way back in the day. Errol Flynn was a better Errol Flynn than anyone can be. And I'm getting that right? He was the action hero. He was the swashbuckler fencing on the stairway.
Yeah.
I was watching.
When I said Robin Hood earlier, that's
right.
That's the Robin Hood I'm talking about forever and always.
So I had to explain Errol Flynn to my boys because I was watching The Court Jester with them, and they have that great sword fight at the end, and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of fencing tropes because they didn't used to have computer special effects, so your big fight scene was two actors who could fence,
who know how to fight. Yeah, because
if you were a real actor back then, you could sing, you could dance, and you could do stage combat, which meant you could fence foil. Thank you, Skoyas. But nobody's going to Errol Flynn like Errol. But Bowie came in, and who did he say that his inspiration was for that pirate?
Oh, because Rolling Stones.
Yeah, it's the head of
Depp. Who Depp came in? You mean not Bowie?
Yeah. Sorry, Depp.
Yeah, Keith. Right?
Keith Richards, right? Yeah. He's like, I want to do the Keith Richards of pirates, which again, you come at it from a whole different frame of reference,
and it's iconic.
And now again, the idea is a lot of it, and then it's the execution. If you marry those two, then you've got a winner. And so we want to avoid doing a Johnny Depp pirate. Me personally. It's okay if there's one of those in your world, but that's not the one that I want to make. Pure swashbuckler, I did that sort of with Viari, and we could put Viari in this, like a slightly reskinned Viari. That's not a terrible thing. Although he works best in that sort of silly tongue-in-cheek D&D space that he was created for. And I feel so bad. They originally created one of the rogue archetypes for me to use based on my play style, because I started playing VR right before 5th edition came out, and they're like, and then I saw like all of the road, and I'm like, ooh, they
Hang on.
this is VR's, and Chris Perkins mentioned it's like, this seems to be kind of what you're doing, and I'm like, oh man, though I don't want to give up my cunning action, I'm gonna leave him as as this. I think they might have even called that rogue archetype the swashbuckler.
I think so.
I've played a swashbuckler rogue. They're fucking brilliant.
Yeah. And now hold on. I don't know if I can officially go on the records and say I was the inspiration for the swashbuckler rogue.
That's the sound of Watsy's lawyers frantically just
right.
checking things.
But it certainly that was a reasonable archetype for them to draw on. The other thing is, it's fun to swashbuckler. If we think of pirate, you could also like, I don't want to do a Han Solo because I think the time for that sort of character has passed. Or in some ways you could also say Chris Pratt in Star-Lord,
Sure.
And that the archetype would be buffoon, the hyper
Lucky
competent
buffoon.
the hyper competent buffoon. So what I'll ask is, without giving me like a huge elaborate backstory, your 3 other legendaries. Now, so long as this isn't going to give away a lot of secrets, use this as an opportunity to tease, right?
Sure. You want me to tell you who's already on Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, like what are their, let's think in the realm of archetype, where if like, how would I describe?
I think I know what you're asking for.
Yeah,
I'll answer the question I think you're asking, and you tell me if I'm missing something.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
So, in order, Ginny's pirate is the captain of the Contessa. Anyone who's watching, by the way, this is the first time I've gone into detail on any of these, so enjoy. The captain of the Contessa originally is a goblin called Isabella Valoroso. However, the Contessa has become stuck on the shell of a colossal dragon turtle called Bessie. So Bessie is in fact the one in charge of where this ship goes. So, and Ginny's tone is lighter. It's sort of a little Final Fantasy. It's a little Studio Ghibli. It's bright blue skies and pennants blowing in the breeze adventure.
Okay. Now
Bessie,
see that? Yeah.
Bessie is a lovely old lady.
Okay.
She is also a ship-sinking Titanic creature,
So hold on. Is Bessie's
the one I did the portrait of.
Bessie and Isabella have an accord. Isabella has become the first mate, and Bessie is now in charge of the ship that is stuck on her back.
Oh my God! Who's writing that?
Ginny Loveday.
Whoever that is, I want to hang out with them in a tree fort and be best friends. That's very good.
I'm fairly certain Ginny lives in a tree fort. So yeah.
I met her at Gary Con, and that tracks. Yeah.
Yeah. Ginny can confirm, I'm sure.
Hey, Ginny, call me. So that's a great way, like adventure. It's not. It doesn't fit into sort of the modus of like icon or archetype, but adventure, Studio Ghibli.
The colors are bright. The crew is happy.
Yeah,
they are in search of golden fortune.
I love that. I love that. So that's one.
The second one, Ron's character is Alien Pentathol, who is a construct. I'll go into the Allium in a little bit, but the Allium Sea is weird. Strange things happen below it. Alien is a construct. He is the soul of an old captain, now in a sort of steampunky, bordering on diesel punky body. and has a submarine called the Allium Nautilus. So we have our Captain Nemo, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, tactical, ruthless, admirer of all things non-human character,
Okay.
cold logic, seeking technology, seeking science-minded, ruthless in that they are emotion light, but they have another goblin first mate who tries to keep steering him back towards humanity for a general kind of organic heart-centered life.
Okay. Now,
So
I think I've got that in terms of mood.
iron, wrought iron, deep sea
Right.
ingenuity.
Okay. So, and your third one?
Todd's character, Stashwick's character, is Eloy Farragut, who is uh, revenge-seeking, gave his soul to save who he wanted. This is our dark ghost ship adjacent warlock. This is our Ahab. This is our Davy Jones from the Johnny Depp movies.
Right.
This is dark tattered red velvet. This is black wooden boards. This is revenge. This is this is mist and rain and
Okay.
chaos.
And I'm sorry to keep jumping in here. It's so, first off, it's really hard for me not, like, the way that you think of these, which I'm assuming there, because all I really can see is how you're describing them, but you have like a visual way of conceptualizing and describing these. There's bright colors, there's grim, there's rain. You're describing like atmospherics, which just shows like my default goes in a different direction, but I'm still and what I would say is part of my impulse, and this is what I think it's an author's impulse, if you or somebody who writes books alone. And I shouldn't say author because there's a lot of different ways to be an author, but if you write your own books alone, kind of in isolation, there's a certain amount of megalomania sort of implied, where you're like, I'm going to make a whole world and then do a story in it. And there's a certain amount of confidence, which is helpful, that it's easy to go into arrogance, to being like, yeah, I'm the god here. And so people tend to fall into the trap of like the one true path. It's like, my way is the best way. My way is the only way. And I try to avoid that. But sometimes people ask me for advice, and then I try to give advice in general terms, because I was going to say, oh God, tonally, these things are really different. If you're looking for a coherent story, and then I'm like, wait, and that's good general advice, saying a coherency of tone, I think, is important. Oh, because you do want Pirates of the Caribbean, you do not want Waterworld. Waterworld was a hot goddamn mess in so many ways, but primarily because it had vastly disparate elements of tone and atmosphere that were in no way brought together into something coherent and pleasant. It was inconsistent within itself. Like, it's a desperate world where humanity is dying, but also like there's goofy bungee jumps and bullshit in it, and it's like, what the shit, like which honestly is what I felt about a couple of the elements in the later Pirates of the Caribbean movie. It's like the first one was beautiful and coherent and cohesive, and then eventually it just kind of, they kept raising the bar, and it just got silly and got stupid. But what occurs to me is, whatever the world, if you are a creature, if you are a person possessed of sufficient power, you can sort of, the first thing you can control is yourself and your actions. But if you have enough influence, you can create a space is that is your space and sort of reflects you. And so these people are this perfect sort of people. It's like it might be a world where everything's chaotic and there's war and there's whatever, but you can have a Studio Ghibli style island if you're a all powerful god turtle, you know, like you can sort of you create your own space with your own rules. So, and then now, do you have any legendaries that you yourself are putting in?
I have a few in the chamber if we need more. The other thing I'll point out to add to your point about because I agree with you. I think narrative cohesion is vital. But this is the thing about these are like, because this is a D&D book. I'm assuming that not every DM is going to put all of these in there.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create the campaign itself will have a cohesion and will sit at the center. And then what these legends allow you to do is drag that center more towards your table's center. So if you've got a bunch of players who love dark gothic, revenge stories, you can put in Todd's. If you've got a bunch of people who like, sky pirates and high seas, you can go to more towards Ginny's. So these are sort of things you can drop into the matrix to shift the center of gravity of the book.
Yeah, and it is great. I'm running a game for my boys right now, and it's set in my world because that's kind of easy for me. And luckily, I can draw on the mythology of the world for whatever is appropriate because I have like a bucket of it. But and that is great because all those things can be in the mythology, the people out there.
Mm-hmm.
But then you bring in the one that is best suited to the tone of the story that you're telling. So that's a great thing. Not just, and how about this? Not to put you on the spot. Like, I don't play so much D&D anymore, but like, stat blocks is one thing. This would still be a good book just to have like as a reference, no matter what game you're playing, right?
I hope so. I mean,
right. Yeah.
We are a 5e asterisk book right now,
right,
because the new edition is coming out. We're keeping a close eye on all of that. We're going to make sure that this is still relevant to D&D full stop in 8 months. But we are, as we did with our last book, Tavern Tales, we're quite character heavy in the way we write, just naturally, I think. So yeah, I mean, you could absolutely lift these characters out and hopefully put them somewhere else. We want to give people characters that have an internal logic to them, regardless of whether you roll a d20 or a d4.
Right.
Why don't I give you a few because I know that you're a lore centric man, and as you say, you want the cohesion. Why don't I give you a few sentences on the sort of what's going on?
No, actually, that.
Or is that not interesting? Is that less helpful?
It's not that it's not interesting. It's that I know I've already kind of taken us down a couple of cul-de-sacs, because hearing about those three other the guest star stuff, I didn't have anything. I had a couple nebulous ideas. I'm never spoiled for ideas, but I didn't want to come up with something and then find out that somebody else has already done that.
Sure, of course.
But what I'm actually thinking now is, sorry, I like my wheels are spinning, which there was a game, one of the first side gigs I was ever offered ages ago. They were doing a computer game set in the Numenera world, and they're like, hey, want to come and write one of the NPCs, one of the companion characters. and I've always, that's the sort of game that was always my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
It was third person isometric, like the old Fallout games, some of the best games ever. Yeah, Torment, right? And so, and then I heard of what everyone, and in Numenera, it's a world designed where it's like any idea you have cannot be too buck wild, you know? Because there's literally a billion years of history to draw on. So you could say, yeah, it's a person and they have 4 pints of nanites for blood. And it's like, yeah, sure. I bet
At
a
some
million
point.
years ago that technology would have existed, so it can still be around.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking now is what I'm and so the companion characters were like a person who was unstuck in time and in contact with all of her other dimensional selves, a person who, like, I think the most normal one was like a world weary guy with like living tattoos and a tortured past, like that was the normal guy. But other people were like a sentient nonverbal blob creature, and there were all these, and I'm like, and I came up with Rin, and she is a little girl with no powers, and I'm like, let me do this.
I love Rin so much.
And Rin, I'm very proud of. And so what I'm thinking is you have steampunk automaton, you have Studio Ghibli giant turtle, and then you've got all of this. And so what I'm thinking is I want to make somebody who is a person. Like there's all deviation, there's no center.
Sure.
Now you could argue that anyone who is powerful enough to sort of do as they will might not be kind of recognizable as just a person anymore, but that's a bummer of a thought. I'd like to think that just a person could do, could do this as well. So then I think, what do we have now? I also, the thing I have to either embrace or walk away from is the character that I've played most recently on Skyjacks with James, which is Jolly Jack, who is not a pirate in a technical sense, but captains a skyship, and he is very dear to my heart. And he's a traitor and a bit of a con man, and he's so much fun to play.
Is it trader with a D or traitor with a T?
Trader.
Got it. Okay.
And so, and I love trader. Has always been like, how about this? Merchant King, is sort of, and I could do some version of that, because what sorts of power are there? There is technological power. There is, there's magical power. There is like personal power. There's like sort of strength of body and arm, which sort of the turtle has sewed up in some ways, right? And so, but what, like a person who is either more use alive than dead is part of Jolly Jack's whole deal. And it's like like a lot of people rely on him for a lot of things, and he's a very useful man, and he's very clever. So he is, if the archetype is sort of the rogue or the rake,
Mm-hmm.
or but also sort of the a little bit of a trickster, which
Yeah.
again is a character type that I really enjoy.
Yeah. A Nancy with a credit card.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And so he has financial power, but really it's connections and cleverness and wit. And that puts him a little bit. Imagine Han Solo, but he's actually good at his job, right?
Sure. You see
Han
this
Solo,
person and go, "How are you still alive?"
right? Where, uh, but I've kind of already done Jolly Jack, which means, and I'd love to bring him to more people, but I don't know if that's the right thing, because I kind of have already done it. And so maybe I'll throw this open to you guys. What sounds better to you or to the chat? The other thing would be effectively Jolly Jack knows everybody, everybody owes him favors, and he is very useful. And he's always prepared. And that's how it doesn't matter how deep the water is because you're swimming on the surface, you know? That's Jolly Jack. But what if I could do that, and we could put a twist on it to make it distinct from Jolly Jack, or make it appropriate to the world, or make it new and interesting, or just make it richer. Or what if, but that ultimately Jolly Jack is sort of, a man above men. He's a little bit of a Batman, which Batman is problematic. Like, we don't want to idealize Batman too much, everyone. He's very unhealthy. And all of what he does is transactional. What if instead we went to, if we're making somebody who is human, why not make it a person whose strength lies in like the things that make us uniquely human, which is to say empathy and human connection, not the mechanistic version of that, which is deals and arrangements and treaties and that, like Jack. What if it is a person, and what if their strength is family? And so then what I want to do immediately is, I'm like, well, if it's family, then I should make it a woman. And then I'm like, wait, why would I think that? That means the culture wants me to think that a woman is the center of family, and there's a lot to actually back that. Nurturance. The more women that are involved in government, the better the government is for people. They've shown it statistically. The more charity money you give to women, the more the actual town, the society, people benefit. And so that is sort of statistically true. But if we're going to have a fantasy, let's have a fantasy of a man who could similarly maybe be as good at this as a woman. What if we had a person, he is a man. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, yep. You know who it is? Okay, yeah, it all just, yeah, okay, I got it. Um, Ollo, do you know what it is to be an orphan?
No! No! Oh my god.
Pirate King! It is a glorious thing to be a pirate king. Like, what like,
Have we slipped into Penzance? What's happening?
yes, because not literal family. I could do this as like a grandmother, and then she has kids and kids and kids, and she's been around forever, and effectively her people are everywhere, like the nanny Og from Pratchett, except the pirate queen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you just don't, oh, she's the sweetest anything,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
oh, you just don't want, like,
Yeah, the tip of the iceberg.
yeah, nobody, no, like, and it's like, oh, we all fight, but like, nobody picks on my little brother but me. And like, there's no more like, and the whole of the Og clan is constantly like infighting and whatever, until somebody outside of it says something, and then it's immediately they're a phalanx, like of terrible wrath, like. So that would be
wolves
interesting.
avoid the Ogs.
That
would
on the that would be interesting, but found family. And so we have a person who has been creating found family. And he is, and he has the ability, because again, think of the way you describe these other people, and it's like, yeah, you can have a adventure, and not end up like dead in a ditch somewhere, even if the world is a grim world, if you have a giant turtle who's got your back, like, and so, and if you're like an obelisk made of pure obsidian and iron, like, you can kind of have your own grim story, and it's like, that will work because, like, well, I mean, what I mean, you're kind of indestructible. How does this person survive? How have they survived? How do they continue to survive? They are someone who brings people together. And so, like, and again, it's easy to think of so many examples of the bad version of this. This is the mob. Again, like, it's the Yakuza, the mafia. They all refer to themselves as the family, right?
I don't want to interrupt your flow for a second,
No.
But we have sort of the bad version of this. One of the pirate lords on one of the islands welcomes deserters from both navies and runs a pirate fortress populated by those. And as long as you're inside and you're not wearing a uniform, then you're family. But they are brutal to everyone else.
Yep. And see, and that's the bad version, is it's the us versus them family, which honestly, this is a great survival technique as shown by like every evolutionary advantage ever. Like, this is how everything survives, with a few exceptions, which are creatures that engage in a form of mutualism, which is like bad versions of that. Well, and actually, like, pirates are parasitic. Pirates do not create.
Yeah, innately.
They but what if but there are like there are things other than parasitism, or there's another version of that. But then there is mutualism, which is both creatures work together and benefit from the arrangement. And instead of being it's like it's us and we protect us by being awful to them, what if instead it's like we welcome everyone and yeah, we welcome everyone and we are inclusive and we want to and we are it's better to be our friend than our enemy, which is what the mob says too, but they don't mean it, because it's like it's better to just not be our enemy. If we are our own friends, you know? Yeah. We have allies and enemies, and then there's us. So you can join us and be an ally for now or an enemy forever. But that's what I like to think of as junk code. That's the sort of thing that made us very successful monkeys, and it makes us awful human beings. We have a lot of that surviving in us. So instead, we have a person who they are working to bring more people in and to be welcoming. You can be part of this family. And that is where their strength comes from, you know? And so in a small way, this is what the crew of a ship is. You know, this is your close family, right? But also crews leave, they come and they go. Oh my God. And in a world like this, where so much of this is on the water, building a good crew is really important. And maintaining a good crew is important. But also, you can get trapped in a crew, right? Like, where's the room for growth? You know, do you get to be like a level 50 cabin boy, level 50 deckhand? Like, if everything goes well and people aren't dying off and so you don't rise in the ranks, but also then if people leave, well, it's like, well, they're not part of our family anymore. So what one of the main benefits is, this is a welcoming, non-exclusionary family that creates things. And the benefit is that you can trust, is that they trust each other, everyone in the family, and they are willing to trust everyone outside the family. And only after there is evidence that some people are not worthy of trust, then not that whole nation, not that whole crew, but those people are then, you don't deal with it. Yeah. And so what this means is, like, if you're looking for members, for new people on your crew, you know you can trust parts of the family. And then people can move, and it's like, hey, you know, we think you're good to be a first mate now, but we have a first mate, but we'll help you find a good place. And that ship will benefit them because, like, this captain is retired and this first mate is now going to go be that captain over there.
So is this a network of crews?
Rather
than a ship?
I think that is where it is. But and a flotilla implies
they go around together,
military, and it implies hierarchy.
Sure.
And that is ultimately hierarchical systems. They're very strong, they're very efficient, but there's problems there. And they do tend to be based on power and strength, whereas and rigid things tend to shatter, and they work perfectly until they don't, and then they don't at all, then they die. But this is something that is built to be resilient. This is a huge, you know what this, okay, I'm going to say this so that we can avoid it specifically. This isn't the Federation.
Sure.
But it's a little similar. Because if you think of, like, the Federation is effectively all of Earth at this point.
Mm-hmm.
In the Star Trek universe. But in this world, it started with just this person and his ship. But, and how about this? What can I throw out that will, like, what can hold this together other than, like, a treaty or an alliance? You know, because that's kind of mechanistic.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You can tell me why it's not like this. If that's the answer.
Yeah.
Is it closer to the Freemasons?
You know, it could be, but that would turn it into a secret thing full of effectively, like, it'd be spies.
A spy network.
And I thought of that too, but if this is a place where everyone knows about it, and there's a certain sort of person that's like, man, I wish I could get onto one of those. I wish I could be part of the family, because that sounds nice. That sounds safe. I would love to work with people I trust. But not everyone is like, how can I work to promote the common good of a group of people, knowing that they will also support me? You know, not everybody thinks that way, especially not typically in D&D worlds where it's like my XP, and if it's a zero-sum game, you know, if you get the XP, then I'm not getting the XP, and that sucks. I want to go up a level. So I thought of that, and that would be a cool one too, you know, but that would be effectively, you know, secret handshakes and everyone, like, informing, and that would be an information network and real smuggling, whereas this would be a group of people who are always true to their word and they never lie. Except sometimes if they break but here's the thing, and this is what makes it resilient. It's not like you lied, you're out forever, because that doesn't make sense. Like, that's not resilient. That's not sustainable, because everybody fucks up. But there are paths towards forgiveness, because that's what a family should do. That's what this is a healthy family writ large. This is what humanity could be, and ideally it should be. And it started with one man and his crew, and now it has spread. And I you know, ultimately you're going to be implementing it, and it's your world, and so I'll let you decide how far it is spread. And it could be the
government goes, oh, that's a cult.
Yeah, like, and again, cult, as soon as you say cult, we're like, oh boy, that's negative.
That's what I'm saying. The enemies of label it that way to keep people away.
You know, and it's sort of like, oh, Jesus, hippies, right?
Yeah.
Which is sort of like, it's equally repulsive to a certain sort of people, because it's like, ugh, you know, great idea, but we don't live in that kind of world. And they're like, yeah, we don't. And that sucks, doesn't it? What are you going to do about it? We're doing something about it.
Sure.
And so, again, and it would be easy for me to fit this into the archetype of a mother, a grandmother, but I want to keep this a guy to push back against the belief that only women can do that. So what do we like better? Do we like somebody who is a mature older man, or do we want somebody who's gone like full grandpa? He's been doing this for 60 years.
Well, so my immediate question with you bringing that up is, what's going to happen to this after he dies? Is he the linchpin? Will this survive him?
And that's just it. That's why it is not a hierarchy. And I don't want to describe it as a web either, because that implies manipulation and whatever.
Sure.
This is, I mean, how about this?
So you're confident that this idea is working enough to outlive him?
That is it. Where effectively, because if this person is smart enough to make it work, he's smart enough to realize that it needs to survive him, mm-hmm. And it needs to survive his child or his successor, because that's the rule of empire. Mm-hmm. It's 3 generations. That's how long an empire lasts, because you have the person who forges it, and that's a conqueror. That's strength of arm, and that's wit. And then there's somebody who, like that person's son or their successor, and that person has luxury and peace and wealth to learn, and they're really smart and they get it and they implement and solidify, but with no challenge, then the 3rd generation comes along and they have never been tested and stressed, and that person is the idiot spoiled child, and they destroy the empire.
Loses it.
And you see that all just again and again and again and again. It's conquer age of peace, and then the idiot kid wrecks it, like again and again throughout history. And so,
never have grandchildren. Learning so much on this.
So now, and I could do it. I was like, well, he's enough. So he's been doing it for 100 years, and it's slowly getting. It's like, no, I don't want to make this only achievable by a mythical race,
Sure.
But to be clear, this isn't just humans. I'm not making a different version of like white nationalists. This is all sentient creatures.
Sure.
You can be a member of the family if you. And so, how about this? We're going to start with the tenets. It is that you keep your word, and that honesty is important. First off is that you keep your promises, first and foremost. Honesty is important, and that dishonesty tarnishes the soul. Now, this does not mean that you always have to be honest, because sometimes there is cunning, there is trickery. These things have their use. And also part of that is honesty is important, and perfect honesty with everyone in the family. Second tenet is all are welcome. And then there's a bunch of attendant things that come after that, which is all are welcome, but you do need to prove your good intent. And effectively, there's what means that you are, what gets you into the family, what means you have to leave the family, and how can you make amends and gain forgiveness. So all of that falls under there. And then you get being of use, meaningful work. Like you could call it what I don't want to call it, I don't want to fall back on utilitarianism. Because as soon as I say greater good, it's gonna harken back to stuff in my world, and then
Yeah.
it's going to be like, oh, Rothfuss just implemented this. But this
Pirate
is
communists.
something, yeah, this is something that I think about a lot. Like, what are we doing here anyway? You know, it's the question, like the good place. What do we owe each other? And this is the answer to that question. Because the first of these is, how do we act? How does this entity, how does this organization survive? And so there are rules about behavior, like what gets you in, what gets you out, and then because only if you survive can you have ideals, in a long term. And then the third one is, what is the ideal? And the ideal is like meaningful work, like doing good in the world. What do we create? And by we, and I'm just going to call it the family for now. And so that is the person, that is the organization that I like. And I realize you're like, hey, make me a pirate, and instead I've made you a nomadic nation that is going to have a culture. It's going to have a culture. It's going to have all this. Julie has something to say.
Yeah, all I was going to say was, if you want to describe like the I don't know, like what this elder guy looks like, I can kind of switch us over to the other screen, the person that started it, because I'm like, do I draw the ship? Do I draw the whole family? Do I draw?
What it is, and you know what?
Because I mean, it's whatever would represent him best, I suppose.
I think what it is, and here immediately, and so how about this? If you want to switch it over, go ahead. And I'm going to grab a glass of water because I went to get it and then I left it somewhere else in my house. And I've been talking to Mile. So if you want to switch your screen, I'll go get my water, and then we'll start drawing this person, and then we'll start drawing this person. Yeah, and I'll be right back.
Okay. So now we're over here.
You're looking forward to drawing generations of pirates?
Yeah, all on their family raft.
Art budget's going to have to go up.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Julia?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Yeah, no, I'm just like kind of looking at vaguely some references that are following like what y'all are talking about. I have my yeah, it's still working.
I think at some point you should show everyone the pirate portrait you showed me yesterday on the screen setup. It's one of my favorite pieces of yours.
You know, it's funny because it's in a different file, but I can do it again. That's how practiced I am at this.
I've got a screenshot on my phone. I don't know if my camera can pick that up.
We're going. It's almost done now.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, this is the character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pat, we're done.
What happened?
Julia's got it.
No, this is the doodle I did yesterday as I was like testing things.
Pat, there's one reference that sort of is sort of pinging around as you talk about this, and it's politically very opposite. But you're sort of describing a John Galt figure.
I don't know if I know who that is.
Atlas Shrugged.
Interesting. All I know is that Ayn Rand did it, and most of the people that I respect hate that book.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's there's many reasons why it's dross. The story's kind of interesting in certain ways, but he's this figure who is pulling people away from industry. All the best minds are vanishing, and no one knows where they're going. And he's creating this sort of objectivist commune, and that's where it all goes Ayn Rand and weird. But what I've been thinking about, what you're coming up with, someone who is an incredible target for the powers that be. Like wanting this man dead sounds like a high priority, while the governments would deny they've even sort of care about him or hear about him, because radical honesty is something that governments aren't able to handle. That's not something that fits into the model of militaristic control that both of these nations will have. My other question for you is whether when I'm writing this up, is this a we didn't like the word flotilla, but is this ships that all go around to is this a fleet,
Nope.
or is this there are ships all over and there is a pax romana of you don't target a family vessel unless you want the whole family descending on you?
It's not even that, because um, it's a step further, or a step in a slightly different direction, because that implies, oh, we don't hurt our own. It's like, well, no, we help our own, and then we help other people. So again, it might be, and it's like, well, hold on, are you even pirates if you're not pirating? And and that might be a good point. Um, and how about this though? What if we? Oh my God. Okay. And because I will admit, having this as and so Julia, we can draw this guy, because, and I'm like, what does he look like? And then initially, I want him to look like the twinkly-eyed, like older, like your favorite older uncle, like, or oh my gosh, to go back to Pratchett, right? Sort of a younger but still old, like Cohen the Barbarian, except he's like an eminently, like a moral sociologist and a pirate, and
Yeah.
A salty Santa.
Yeah.
But then, and like, that might be, how about this? Why don't we say that this guy has existed and he has already died?
Okay. There we go.
Because you're right. Because
Okay.
because and again, I'll throw this out to you. What do you want more in your world? Because part of me is still like, if it all centers around this person, then even if and I might argue, oh, okay, no, there we go, perfect, this is it, this is the best of both worlds, where because I'm like, oh yeah, magic, we've got magic, fine, let's do magic. And what we have is, and this guy, I'm going to say, he started an absolute merchant king, maybe ruthless, right? If not ruthless, then definitely opportunistic, and had whatever his version of his Scrooge awakening, right?
Right.
So he has trade alliances, ships, people, like more than a ship, like even just like a captain of a ship who trades. Oh my God. And if you think about like what makes a ship valuable, like half the value of a ship, half the value of a captain is like their maps, like who they know, right? And so imagine if all of that knowledge is shared freely among all the members of the family. So here's what happened. This is where their power comes from. If you're in the family, you have access to the map. You have access to the book. And the book is a Gestalt entity, which is accessible by the captains in the family. But if you're not in the family, if you break the rules, then you're out, and your access to the book is revoked. And this means map, and this means contacts and information. Also, this would give the players the opportunity to court the family. Gaining access or having a member of the family on the crew
So
might.
you think you can do that? You can have family members on
Oh
It's
yeah,
not.
on
It's
other
not. It's
crews.
on another cruise. Okay.
Everywhere. You know, it's sort of like honestly, just as soon as you say cult, there's a lot of baggage there.
Yeah, I never meant. I never wanted that to be true. I'm saying
But
that's a label from
as
outside.
soon as you say religion, you get a similar amount of baggage,
Hmm.
if not way more. It's just that it's so much baggage, it almost becomes invisible.
Yeah.
Just like the word religion, religio. Do you know this? Because I know Ollo. You're I'm sorry, Ollo, Allo,
Ollo rhymes with
Allo.
follow. Yeah.
Allo. Like if anyone would know, it'd be you. Religio means to bind. Religion, right?
I don't think I knew that. That's
Right?
Wow.
terrifying.
Yeah. No, it's fucking.
Ugh.
But honestly, um, so how about this? The flagship is the Ray. Um,
Mm.
um, um, and and you get access to the book, and this is the good. This is sort of the collectivism. If you want to view it mechanistically or sort of grimly or whatever, it's like ants thrive for a reason, man. They're everywhere. They're the most successful entity that evolution has produced, right? Um, and but and so this guy who, let's call him Jack, right? The founder, right? Was a merchant king. Some say ruthless, some say clever, uh, certainly self-interested, had a moment, and then moved on to form the thing that we're going to call the family for now until I can come up with a better name. And then he made it. But again, with something like this, it's not going to last. It won't last until a person is dead. You don't know if it's really going to stick around until it survives your death.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what. And this is what's going to make it cool. What was hold on, I don't want to ask and give away the game. I'm just gonna look it up here.
Also, I'm just kind of drawing a hippie old dude. If y'all have comments.
Okay. So. and help me find a way for this, because man, if we're gonna subvert some tropes, if we're gonna try to do a good version of a bad thing, there's a reason, and sorry for this to take an entirely like weird left turn, there's a reason that child soldiers are super effective. It's because children believe things with their whole hearts. What if we do a good version of a child soldier? I want to say, because I'm like, well, who would assume the role of Jack after he's gone? But the thing is, he isn't in charge. He set up a system that does survive him. But then I think he I think it's more like sociologically, I would like him to set it up and then it would self-sustain. But we are in a magical world here. I think he is I think that he has stuck around after his death in order to, because of course you would, because you sort of want to supervise.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, like, if nothing else, he wants to be around to ensure the smooth transition of power, because even though he, as the time had gone on, he had divested himself of a lot of his authority, people looking to him. He needs people to solve their own problems. And also, it's sort of like America was set up, ideally, to be fluid. You know, like our Constitution has a way for us to change it, because they're like, yeah, this is what we need now, but not everyone will need this forever, and we need a way to fix it. And so he built things like that in to the system, but also it hasn't existed for a long time. So I don't know enough about the current D&D lore to think of or to propose, like, what's the not cliche / better version of a lich, you know?
Sure. We can make it up. I mean, you know,
and that I like better, which is he is around, but now if this was a world that was a little more Studio Ghibli, then I could say, and because in Studio Ghibli, the world that is created feels real, but it runs by its own rules, right? And so I could say, only children get to be captains of these ships. You know?
Sure.
Which effectively, oh my God. No, his name wasn't Jack, it was James. And Julia, and only the people on here will know this, because don't put it in the book. What this guy was a ruthless, he liked a pirate, although he insisted on merchant king and privateer, trade agreements, you know, whatever the equivalent of, like, would he sell slaves? Yes. Would he set up a plantation and get the money off it? Yes. You know, like an empire. Would he do everything that governments do to maintain power, like overthrow a little government somewhere, set up his own people, rig an election? Yes. Like, of course, to get what he wanted, which is power, money, influence. But all, again, in the heretical direction. A pirate in every sense, beyond just piracy. And when you draw a picture of him, he needs to make him an older version of Captain Hook.
Okay, I was so hoping this is where you were going. Thank you. Thank you.
And what he does is he has his come to Jesus moment.
My God, you work fast. It's insane.
He has a come to Jesus moment, and he realizes that, like, we need to be better than this. And he puts his considerable power and intellect toward making something better. And effectively, and it's not like 3 ghosts or whatever shook him out of it. It was some kid, right? Maybe a group of kids, right? Do you know what it is to be an orphan? A lost boy?
God.
And so
this has been rattling around the back of my mind since you started talking about this as maybe Lost Boys. Thank you.
And so what these are is urchins, orphans, they are the ones who have access to the book. And so they work with captains. And the thing is, children believe things with their whole hearts, which means the worst version of that are children that are twisted up into child soldiers. But you can also teach a child to think and believe in, you can have them believe terrible lies or beautiful lies, and it doesn't matter because children aren't rational yet. And what we hope is to teach children beautiful lies. We lie to them all the time, because we want them to believe in things like beauty or in truth and things that don't exist. And so these children are the ones with access to the book. And they're members of the family. And I also think the book has people. Okay. And you know what? Captain James T. Book. Right? And Julia, if when you're drawing pictures of him, you can draw an early version. Which is probably him. Go ahead and don't go full Grand Vizier from Aladdin, but he should look a little sinister. In the younger version.
Right.
The later version, absolutely put him in the red coat. And Ollo, they did come at him. All of these, everybody came at him because they're like, this used to be 2 ships and now it is 10 ships. And then they're like, it used to be, well, we thought it was 10 ships, but it turns out it's 500 people spread across 100 ships. And now it's 4,000 people and they aren't all on ships. And so, and they kept coming at him. So showing the picture of him, he's older. It's been 30 years he's been building this. And the assassins have come at him several times. So he's been wounded, terribly wounded. And I want give him a quote after like an assassin or a fleet or whatever came after him, or somebody like in a tavern. Give him his Teddy Roosevelt moment where like somebody tried to kill President Roosevelt, like came up, shot him, and Roosevelt beat him to death with his walking stick, I think.
He kept giving his speech. He was shot.
I know he kept giving a speech. Yeah.
And then he's like, "You can't kill a bull elephant," or something like that, and finished his speech. And so he, like, give him that moment too. And so, but they kept coming after him, and that's when he realized that he needed. He eventually realized they will take me out, and they'll try to use that as the end of this. And that's probably when he started making his plans for how he would stay on and ensure that things continued, that it didn't go astray, because, and so, in the later picture of him, a year or so before his death, the last official portrait, that he posed for a year before his death, they've attacked him several times, and that is the picture where you see he's missing a leg, and a hand, uh, and right. So he's gonna in that he'll look like a very old Captain Hook, um, uh, and so he'll have a hook, he'll have a peg leg, in that later picture, but not in the first one. Even though in the first one, he'll maybe have a mustache, he'll have the red coat, he'll have the dark hair, and he'll kind of there will be an opulence surrounding him, um, and um, and so what do we call? And I want to say he came on like there had been, do we want it to be a ship or a little colony or a little village where effectively maybe a wrecked ship and there's a town, where it was a ship that had slaves or whatever, but it was a bunch of children, and he was tasked to collect them. And so he was off and he was trying to round up these kids, and they made his life a hell for a year. And finally he did, after a year there, and whoever was leading them, and he ended up winning because he's a grown-ass man with unlimited resources. And then he wins and he realizes how badly he's fucked up, and then he decides to become a better person. Or this kid outsmarts him. Oh my god. And that's just it. The kid does outsmart him, where they load up the ship and they take off, and there is the classic chase, and like he's chasing down the ship, and he finally catches him, and it's not all of the kids on the ship, it's the one kid. And but they're a week away, and all of the rest have scattered, and then he takes the kid, and the kid is first his prisoner because he's trying to figure out where would they go, and then the kid is his cabin boy, and then eventually the kid brings him around, and so all the time later, and so the effectively, and that's one of the tenets, is that any orphan child, any homeless child is automatically given entrance to the family, is automatically admitted to the family.
Can I just interrupt you for one second?
Yeah.
You just because it's remarkable. You have, with a blindfold on, you've hit an on-ramp onto the book already. There's a synchronicity happening here that's so cool. And this is not something I've talked about at all with the book, but my players who played the campaign this is based on will attest this is real. I have the bones of, and again we're in Schrodinger's book right now, so none of this exists. These can be elided perfectly. I have in the world my equivalent of the Baker Street Irregulars.
Oh,
known as the Scruffians.
Oh my god, yes.
Who are a network of kid thieves and spies who stow away or take jobs as cabin boys or what have you, and there is a network coast to coast of orphans, runaways, ragamuffins. You are welcome in it until you come of age, until you turn 16 or 18. I haven't decided yet. At which point you are a friend of the family. You're what's called an uncle, But you are no longer, you don't have access to the sort of the hidey holes and the stash houses as much anymore.
Oh
But
my God.
these
No, and what it is the founding members of that were the kids that escaped.
hmm
And here's the thing. Um, the family refers to those as the Lost Boys. And any of them who want to come in, that's ref, they are the found family. They're it's like those are foundlings. That's what they call them, is like, no, you get to come back. And so I think these two organizations, it's not like they're enemies.
that
Probably the Scruffians
they're cousins.
are like Jesus Christ, you know, these idealist whatever.
Sure.
But the others are like, we need to be patient and forgiving, and we need to be ready for them when they come back. And if they come back and they fuck up, they, more than anyone, need the opportunities to make mistakes and be forgiven, because it's been hard, right? And again, this is effectively built to bring in children and help them. And so if you build a system like this that is able to work with children, then adults should be able to operate within this system. And they are expected to, except they're given fewer, like, second chances. You know?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
the adults are held to a higher standard.
Sure.
And but I would argue it might even be that the book might not be is like access to it might be.
Is there a book aboard each ship? You know, for example,
Well,
is it a or
yeah,
is, or it,
actually, again, if we're going to make this truly decentralized, actually the captain wouldn't have access to the book, because then again it's a series of small hierarchies, which isn't really decentralized, you know. It's, you can have, and honestly you could have everybody on a ship be a member of the family and not the captain, and that's fine. But you know, or maybe half of the crew or a few of the crew, but again, if only the captains had access to the book, then all of the members of the family would become captains everywhere, because
Sure.
that's just an insurmountable advantage.
Yeah.
But that would lead to huge problems,
yes,
you know.
yeah, sure, yeah.
And so instead it is these children that have access to the book, and then eventually they do age out of it, and they lose access to the book. But then by that point, they are part of the family. They've internalized it, and they're able to move on and be of service to ships and crews and the world and the family in other ways. But
Is
one
the
of
book is the
yeah.
book a red herring? They call it the book so that kings and queens will tear their hair out trying to find this book, and it doesn't exist. It's just information that is constantly kept alive and shared and remembered. And
I think what it is, and now see that I would put in my world, you know. But given that D&D is a very like magic rich world, and again, I can think of so many ways to do it, like, and some of them are dark, like, you know, there are, you know, 770 actual books, you know. And if you want to get real weird, you know, each of them, like, part of the leather of the cover You know where that comes from,
Sure,
right?
yeah, exactly.
But nah, like I don't think that's tonally that's not appropriate for what we're trying to do
Yeah,
here.
we get Warlock very fast.
Uh-huh. Um, which I mean, you could almost, like, if you're building this, like, the kids could have, you could treat him a little like a patron.
Mm.
He is he's a patron, and what he gives these kids is, access book, and although that
Sure.
almost simplifies it,
Yeah.
it lessens it by defining it, however, given that the nature of the game is kind of codified, at the very least, these
And
kids,
investigative.
yeah, you could give them something like the ability to detect lies, something like that. It would be, obviously, that's fiddly. I don't want to get lost in it, but I would say they do talk about the book. However, I would say that each kid has what they call their book, and for some of them it's an actual book. For some of them, it's a deck of fortune-telling
I have my
cards.
book. Your book is a ring you brought from home.
Oh, it's all the book. It's all the book. It's the
Right.
book. And so that's how everyone refers to it.
But how you read the book is
It's all you.
personal.
Well, right. And so it could be, runes that you cast. It could be, I had a dream, a dream interpretation, like and it could be, I meditate,
I've got it. Okay, I've got it. If I can throw something in that I think helps. Like I said earlier, the allium, the sea is weird between it. We are coming up with we have a whole new class called a wave singer, who is someone who was born on the coasts of the allium and has a strange connection to it. It's called the allium because it's a natural purple tinge, and it suffers from these things called Unna storms, which are deep sea storms that happen, after which there's always a period where things are a little weirder than normal. Fish that haven't been seen in 1,000 years turn up, or the treasure from a ship that only left port yesterday rises out of the sea. It gets odd. So what if if you join the family and you're accepted in for a while, once people decide you're a good egg and that you're worthy of having it, you start drinking allium water for a while, and after a few days, a week or so, the way you read the book makes itself aware. Something like that. You sort of there's a christening equivalent.
Yeah. I a way, it could be like that. Now, but that implies it could be done to a person, or a person has to do a thing or go through a ritual, as opposed to everyone is entitled. Not everyone can, not everyone does, but I like the thought of, here's what I'd like to avoid, because I'm always worried about, there's so many cool ideas that can happen in fantasy. Well, I mean, Tolkien. It's, I can hold Tolkien up as an example because we all started with Tolkien. We all have to acknowledge our debt to Tolkien. And Tolkien, there's a reason that, I mean, his work is wonderful. However, he's responsible for, or rather, it is because of his work has done more to promote racism than any of a dozen Nazi rallies, because he made it so appealing, and it looks so innocent and harmless and cool. where, and you could say, well, no, like Legolas shows that he can like dwarf shit too,
Mm.
but that actually, all it does, it's like, no, all elves are like that, but there can be an exception to what
There are
elves are
good
like.
ones.
Yeah, there are some like sure, all Asians are good at math. It's not wrong that elves are cool, like Asians are good at math. It's racism isn't bad. Yeah, there's something called positive racism,
Yeah.
and it's still racism, and it leads to essentializing and saying categorizing and all this unfortunate stuff. And so similarly, and if you go back in various like old versions of D&D, like if you were a guy, you got an extra point of strength. If you're a woman, you got an extra point of charisma. Why? Well, because it kind of reflects a cultural belief. And of course you were one or the other. And see, that's the thing. It's not so much because, yeah, actually, truthfully, guys tend to have a little bit more upper body strength, but the real poisonous concept there is that you either have to be a man or a woman, right? And that one sneaks by you because you're offended by the inherent sexism of the one, and you don't even realize that the other one,
Sure.
you swallow that without complaining. So similarly, I worry about things like, it's in your blood, and it, something in your blood gives you the ability to, it's like, ooh.
Yes. Yeah, we're into some tricky territory.
The divine right of kings. Some
Yeah.
people are better than others. Some people are magical. Some people can suck it. And so I like the idea. How about this? It can be emergent, or it can be triggered or promoted. But that means there's not only one way. I would say some kids on the street just realize that when they see birds, they know, like,
they know which merchants are welcoming to orphans and
right.
which ones will give you a kick.
Yeah, it's like, oh, the birds are here, and you go into the shop and you're like, I know that you're gonna be fair to me, and they're like, how do you know? And they're like, well, the birds are here, and that merchant is a member of the family, and they're like, oh, it's one of our lost children. Yeah, and those, it's but now you're a foundling, come with me and welcome to the family. And and maybe they're encouraged to learn how to read the book. Some people are better at it than others, and for some people, like they gaze into smoke or fire or a bowl of water with a drop of ink. All of the classic scrying or divinatory things could be
so
access to the book.
So chicken and egg this for me. So I want to make sure I understand. Is it that some kids wander around, realize they have, to belittle it for a second, the Shining,
right?
That they have, they realize that they are different. They don't know why, and they are thus drawn to the family who explain, oh, you're one of us? Or is it that any Joe Schmo off the street can go and find the family and through them learn to meditate, as it were?
I would say, first off, all are welcome into the family. However, all are welcome to try to join the family. However, and it's, I'll have to lob this to you because this is one of those things. It's boy, Briar Rabbit is such an old story, but the concept of the tar baby, Briar Rabbit is actually a weird, like, children's version of an old African, like, trickster story. Briar Rabbit is an animal spirit trickster, but we only remember it through these children's stories. But he's like, oh, you got me. Don't throw me into that briar patch. Oh, do whatever you want. Don't throw me. And so he's a trickster, but he's also an idiot because these tricksters are always making mistakes. And one of them is somebody's like, I want to get Briar Rabbit. but he's too smart. And so they make like a scarecrow made of tar. And so he goes up to it and he starts talking to it, and it won't respond. He gets upset. He hits it. And as soon as he hits it, it's made out of tar and he gets stuck.
Yeah, I remember this.
Me creating
God, that's just unlocked in memory.
Right? Me creating this, all of the rules of this culture is a tar baby for me. So I'm going to have to divest myself and say, go crazy. But here's what I say. There is a way, like, as an adult... It's more that I want to make sure I know the things you don't want it to be, I guess. Exactly. But an adult can earn their way into the family. Children can earn their way in. It's a little easier for kids, and they're trusted more, and they're forgiven more. But I will say orphans and the homeless children are immediately in the family. They are in. They don't have to earn their way in. And so there's, I would say occasionally, by doing a great service or whatever, or proving yourself trustworthy, you could be invited into the family without necessarily striving to be, But then once you're in if you say, I would love to be a member of the family, then you will be held to their standards. And then you can be, and again, the discipline, it's like they aren't going to put a horse head in your bed. They aren't going to show up and gun down, they're not going to show up at your daughter's, what's the 16th birthday?
Oh, quinceañera.
Quinceañera. Yeah. It's like, well, no, now you're out of the family, and it's a little worse than having never been in, because now you've proven that you have, before you were just a person, which means we trust you, but maybe you've made, people who have broken their word to the family, I would argue they're marked. Ooh, yeah, let's bring in some of that Treasure Island shit. If you have broken a promise to somebody in the family, you're marked, and people with access to the book can see it.
Okay.
Yep. They see it on you. But also, if you were in the family and you betrayed the family's trust, you are also marked. And there's a way back in, but you have to earn. I mean, there's not just contrition or whatever, but you got to earn your way back in through meaningful corrective action and what's it called in the real world? Restorative justice.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But you were about to say?
So this is a good time to shift focus slightly to again, more what it isn't than what it is, I guess, but what the book is in terms of what it gives access to.
Right.
Does the book tell you the secrets of the ancients? Does it go wooey woo and magic and or is it, as to sort of stick with where you're placing James, is it a human document? Is it, this merchant has a basement that's warm and he'll always give you some bread in the morning? Is it that this guy says he's very rich, but actually he's deeply in debt and is about to lose his house? What information is in the book?
So what, again, if I was putting this in a novel, I'd be able to play fast and loose, and everyone reading it would get a sense for what was in the book and how it was accessed. But and this is, in some ways, it's my strength when I'm running a game, but also it's my weakness. Is and oh boy, before, what I should have done when I'm like, hey, are you sure you really want me? I should have said, you should go check out Kobold Press. They asked me to write a little magic item for them because they were bringing in a bunch of people. They were doing the Vault of Magic.
Okay.
And they're just a bunch of D&D people and writers and folks make a little.
Kobold Press is fantastic. If you don't know it out there, check it out.
they're like, make a magic item. We just want a little, and with an emphasis towards like not huge world breaking whatever, just like, and I think somebody had, I think it was something like the seasoning spoon or something, and effectively it's a spoon. It's like a wooden spoon, and it makes whatever food you cook taste real good.
Excellent.
The end.
Beautiful.
And I'm like, that is a badass magic item.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because you can give it to your players, and you don't unbalance the game, and they think it's rad. You know, and they're like, could you make us a magic item? I'm like, yeah, sure, I could throw out a quick one. And they're like, we'll write it up, don't worry. I'm like, great. And then I come back and I'm like, okay, here though. and there's 2 full pages of write-up of mine. Because I created a concept of something that I love. It's called the Fulton Door. And it's like, it's a lot. So I realize that's kind of what I'm doing here too. Sorry. You're welcome. I'm sorry.
Delighted, and we can can pick and choose a little bit, and sort of we figure out what needs to be rules and what can just be lore.
And so, yeah, what I'll say is, and you know what I would say is, if this is in your book, like if I was writing a game guide for an adventure, I would say, here's the description of it. Here's in italics, it's somebody talking about the family or the urchins. Here's a little snippet from a historian who's obviously racist, or whatever.
Sure.
And I'd say, so you get an idea of what it's like. Here's the game write-up. Here's some in-world things showing different perspectives on the family, giving a bit of a triangulation point. And then I would say, note to DMs, don't let any players have access to the book, because they should only be able to befriend or have somebody on their crew. Yeah. And then this is your opportunity to bring information into the story that you need to move the plot forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a few of these already for DMs.
And, it's like, but also, and actually, it's probably going to be relatively rare for somebody to be playing, unless they were purpose like, hey, I want to play a 12-year-old boy with access to the book. But
also,
still,
if you don't think, they'll see you coming a mile away. If you are joining to get access to the book, you're screwed.
That's a bit, yeah. And the thing is, are you looking to make the world a better place? Because then why wouldn't they want to be on your crew? Are you, and so self-interest is not necessarily bad. But if all you have is self-interest, that's not going to carry you very far. And I think that ultimately is what you have to prove is not loyalty. You have to prove a certain degree of willingness to work for the common good, and to support the world, and to sometimes do good for the benefit of society as a whole and the family. This is in no way a new concept. You only got to be a Roman citizen by you're born into it, or
you're made free. You're made one.
By 10 years in the Legion.
Right, military service, yeah.
And why? You're subverting your own safety, and you're giving up 10 years to defend the fucking empire. And so honestly, honestly, and this is, I used to say this all the time, and now I'm like, oh Christ, do I want to go on the record with this? But I'm like, yeah, sure. As an off the cuff comment, I like, sure, everyone should have the vote, fine, but actually, but actually, I'd love to walk that back. How about you get to vote here in the U.S. if you're willing to put 2 years into AmeriCorps? Now, AmeriCorps isn't maybe the all-encompassing thing that it could be, but it's, it is. You go and you build houses for people. You go and you improve parks. It's, because if you're saying you get you build, you make. Now, if you're in some countries, you got to do your military service, and that's how you show that you're part. But what does that imply? It's the only service you can perform is fucking training to kill? That sucks.
Yeah.
I would say I would much rather, why is Jimmy Carter, he was a great president, and if you want proof, it's like he's 80 goddamn years old and he's still making houses for homeless people.
Sure.
It shows that his heart was in the right place, and that's who I want making decisions for my fucking country. So I would say that is the core of it's service, service to the world and to the family, and that's maybe how you get in, and maybe that's how you get back after you fuck up, after you break the rules. But in terms of what's in the book, I do think the core of it, and maybe it started as people, trade routes, the maps of the winds and the tides, these hard-won, things that captains have in their logbooks that were pooled and shared. I would also say that James' book, Captain Book, oh my God, it's Captain Book, one of he would probably be, if we're going to make him a monstrous power monger, he would be a multi-class. He'd be multi-class wizard, rogue,
bard.
Maybe. I would need to sort of think about it, but definitely wizard. But one of the things he would do is, and the thing that made him sort of marginally tolerable, is that he would absolutely take out other pirates, because other pirates take out other ships.
Sure.
And they know secret places, and other pirates probably have other captains' logbooks, which he then would incorporate into his book. And then he probably had even started a franchise. He's like, how about you work for me? He'd be like, I'm taking all of your books. Now I can either take your ship or you can stay in charge. You owe me 30% of everything you pull in. But guess what? So long as you make your payments on time, you get access to my book. But then it was a physical book that he gave them. And then, but after his come to Jesus moment, he realized that
I drowned my books.
Oh my God, he did drown his book. And
into the allium, maybe, where they drink from, and then that okay.
Yeah.
And now we've reached Prospero, people. There we go. From Peter Pan to Shakespeare in an hour and a half.
Yeah. And tides, reefs, maps, key people, but I think you could almost treat it as like an oracle, where you could treat the kid like a little oracle to say, is there a safe harbor here? And the GM's like, yeah. And that promotes sort of the collaborative storytelling.
Sure. Where,
how often as a GM are you like, make a perception roll, and they fail, and you're like, motherfucker.
The other one of you have advantage on
this, right?
Please
make this perception roll so you can remember that there's a little
I just
town
remember
here.
that item I gave you 10 months ago. It
Please.
suddenly glows and it points towards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, not only can the kid come to you and say, I have seen a flight of birds, or I was playing cards. Oh my God. And there's a lot of opportunity for this to be fun. And I want to say in this, in the Scruffians, which please do not let them be wholly subsumed into this idea, because I love them existing.
I love the cousins sort of quality.
Where there's probably some of them who have access to the book and they don't want to join the family. Right? Because they might still be homeless or orphans and they stumble into it. And that's fine. Maybe they don't receive training or encouragement. Maybe it's a little more scattershot. But I want to say that if you have access to the book, you can kind of be encouraged into it. Sometimes it manifests. Sometimes it could be encouraged or trained or whatever. But, but generally speaking, you do age out of it, which is a very Peter Pan thing.
Yeah.
But I would also like to say, in defense of, I was a Peter Pan when I was Peter Pan age, and I don't know if I ever stopped. Right?
This is the point where I brag that Captain Hook and I went to the same school.
Oh,
by the way.
Oh,
Captain Hook is one of the most famous old Etonians that no one knows about. His final words in the books, Floreat Etona, eat and flourish. Just putting that out there.
That is great. But I think you do tend to, starting around puberty, it starts to fade out for some kids. And again, to say 18 is a very modern concept of adulthood,
sure.
Which, but the truth is also between 16 and 18, like developmentally, people change. But also that tends to be a little human centric. I don't know if D&D ever really got around to saying, here's how quick a dwarf gets old or whatever.
Sure.
But I say that some people keep access to the book, and you can leave it ambiguous. But I think it is quite rare. But I would say, that also allows, like, if you're still in the family and if you had access to the book when you were younger, it's possible. Or maybe even there are a few people who they stay in the family and they lose access to like this broader sense of like, I know this, or I hear a secret, or I know what really happened to your wife, which is honestly, if you've ever known any little kids, sometimes they say some very creepy shit.
We could get, oh my God, we could get into some of these. I've been talking to Granny, who they've never met. Yeah.
But
who
also,
died 4 years ago.
I think maybe, and I wouldn't want to even codify it like that and say a few people grow up and they keep access to the book, but it's generally only the maps and the logs and stuff like that. I would say some people keep it. Sometimes a flash of it might come back. That sort of, it gives the people running the game the opportunity to play in the space, rather than be like, oh Jesus, it would be really cool if I had like the old deckhand. It's like Scruppy or whatever his name is, and he's like, he is 50 years old and he is still swabbing the deck, but he used to be, he was a foundling, and and one day he's like, Captain, it's like, I had one of those dreams again, you know, and
don't set sail until tomorrow.
I already love
Yeah.
Scrubby, the deckhand.
You got a name and an accent, and suddenly he's a character.
I could do this all day.
I could do this all day
for
too,
days
obviously.
and days and days.
Hit me with what else you need.
Before we're coming up on time, we gave ourselves a sort of a cushion, and we're coming to the end of the cushion. So I want to make sure. Julia's been doing phenomenal work in the background. I can't focus on both. Julia, these are stunning.
Thanks.
The last thing I'll ask for is very should be very relatively straightforward, and you can say this matters or it doesn't. The most important things in a good pirate story are the crew, the captain, and the ship itself. So we've established that this is a network. This is not one ship. We've got a flagship name. I'm going to ask you this: is there a naming convention for family ships, or is this anything can be? That's not the point. It's not about labels. It's more about the people aboard.
I think it'd be about the people. I don't know about a convention for ships because, and also I start to get a little lost in. It used to be the idea, of course, if you're a pirate and you're the captain, then it is your ship.
Mm-hmm.
Except if you're not a pirate, you can be a captain, but it's probably not your ship.
It's exactly.
And so
it's the Northumberland that you are the captain of right now.
You're appointed to it, or you're hired onto it. So I don't think, I mean, there might be some, I would say there probably are some family ships. However, I think it might be better. How does the family, because I'll say this, they're not if it was a secret society, then you need sign, countersign, you know, thieves marks or a handshake. But this is, it's open.
Out in the open, yeah.
And they're, but also to be clear, what the family is not is, I want to make sure I'm using the term right. I'm gonna look it up quick. See, I was gonna say evangelical, but, and this is the problem with going to the internet instead of having a real goddamn dictionary. Evangelical, I was going to say, what's the word that means your mission is to go out and turn them into you?
Missionary. Yeah, there isn't a mission. There isn't a missionary quality
there is
to it.
Not. It is
evangelical.
Welcoming.
I mean, that's quite literally what evangelizing is.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I was right.
Yeah.
So the family is not evangelical. They are there, and they help, but they're not. It's not join us and then you get bread.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, or learn your Bible verse and then we'll come and help your town.
Sure.
It's we're here to help, and if you want to help, then you can help us help. You know. So they're not that, but also the and I got a little lost in that. How do they identify each other?
Are they all in the book? I mean, are the ship names all in the book?
Well, and there might be a few ships that are captained and owned. They're considered sort of family ships.
Sure, legacy ships.
Legacy ships, like and Book's ship. I want to say, Julia, I also, and again, I realize I'm like, ooh, and then this illustration, and then this illustration. It's that you probably you're not going to do a chapter on this guy. So so there's probably not room for me to keep saying and, except I feel like it would be a shame if having the early version of him, the later version of him. Ooh. Um,
Saw that happen in real time.
but if you, but I'm like, you need the kid in one of
Oh,
them.
I that was gonna be my question: is who's the new kid? But
Well, and so that would be the middle one. Like here he
right.
is as the rapacious, whatever. Here he is as the older, peg leg. He looks more like Captain Hook, but there it's a little more grandfatherly. But in the middle, I would say it's the triumphant, like the portrait that he got done, either like the propaganda image that he put, because he spent a year hunting these kids, and he's like, they fucking got me, and so it's him and this little boy in chains, or it would be the middle version where it's him, and just maybe in the background it's this boy as the cabin boy.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, he's obviously the center of this image, because I always think, like, for a map, I don't think, what does the map show? First thing I think is who made this, who drew it, and who is paying them, right?
Yeah.
Who's in the middle?
Yeah. But so he's the center, but truthfully, this kid is 100% stealing focus.
Mm-hmm.
Where and if he's in chains, or not, I wouldn't mind him having a little bit of the classic Peter Pan pose, or just looking like
he knows
like he's like,
this is for now,
for now, like I'm in
this
chains,
is for now.
But yeah, honestly, and I can't help but think of him looking like my younger son, like,
yeah,
where
I mean, he's got that look in his
got
eye,
that grin,
yeah.
and he's like but so in terms of the name of the legacy ship, and we also need the name for this kid. The Ray, R-A-Y, is a good name for a ship, right? Sea Ray,
Ray of light.
And just for myself, like, the thought of like Ray Ligio is just kind of funny. That's where it comes from. That's just for me. But and then I'm like, it would be too much to call this kid Pete. Although if you do want to call him Pete, as in P-E-A-T. Mokill in the chat says Pietro is a fun name.
Yeah.
The naming conventions for Telagra and Castigia are mashed up Germanic and Hispanic and Spanish.
I was hearing a commonality that I couldn't have put my finger on, but I could tell there was a rule there.
So they're sort of Juliana Fuster and Liego Herzog, and just these sort of strange mishmashes of sounds that I'm having quite a lot of fun with. So Pietro fits very well, actually. Pietrish.
Yeah. If I had a really good name for the kid, I'd throw it out there. For the ship, the ship is Ray. I might even leave it to you. Does the kid die? Is the kid still around? I don't know.
I'll figure out how many generations dead James is interesting.
I'd like to think that he's been gone for at least, like, if it's not more than 10 years, it's probably 20 years. he's gone, which means he worked on it for 30 years,
Yeah.
and then and in some historically 50 years isn't a long time, but I don't know how, like, Mormonism is only what?
Scarily young.
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah.
If you
But,
make
Like mid
if you make an
1800s.
Mitt Romney's grandfather, like new grandfather, great grandfather, like it's within 3 or 4 generations, was there. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
So I would say something a little bit like he started working on the family 30 years before he died, because something like that will take a long time, and then probably at least 20 years since he died. Um, but maybe 30, or I wouldn't, but I think it would need at least 50 years to kind of be an entrenched part of the
Sure,
culture.
to settle in and not be a flash in the pan.
But in terms of
I get it, Ollo.
how are people identified, I would say the ships, you could have something added to the flag, as in like
something sewn on,
not
almost
on, but maybe because you can fly any colors, but then if it is also the ship is owned, or the captain is, then maybe there is something maybe like a little border to the flag, or something that
and also this is a family ship.
Yeah, and because we're not exclusionary. It's not us or no one.
Yeah.
It's and in terms of people themselves, I'm torn, because part of the reason you make a point of looking like a Franciscan monk is that you are on a mission, right? Part of the like, you do dress in a uniform because it's us and them.
Yeah.
And so there's no uniform.
No.
But maybe so no secret whatever, no uniform, but also I don't want it to be something like, well, sometimes if you're kind of Christian, then sometimes you wear a cross. That's a little too nothing, but it's also too solid. Like, it's only a cross, you know? Like, but what if it were something like, what if there's a color or a gem or something that, if you're poor, you could just have a little bit, you could put a little, like, stitching this color, but you could also have an earring, or a
you're wearing the crimson, for example, or the sort of thing.
Where it obviously, you could make a point of it if you want to be very proud of this.
Full jacket of cerulean versus kind of just some
but or if you can think of a cool signifier they could have, and if I would say some people, I would guess, are very proud of their membership, like tattoos, that's very in keeping, but that's a matter of personal choice.
Yeah, you've decided.
Yeah.
Great. I like that very much. I love that. I'm going to fight every single creative instinct I have and say we need to stop.
We should. Because again, I could go forever.
Yeah, this is why this right here with the two of you, this is why I'm allergic to working in an office. This is why I just can't do it. This is why I do what I do.
It's such a treat for me. Now, Julia, is there anything else that you could use? And how about this? I'll try to just give answers and not expound or whatever, because we should put a bow on it.
No, I mean, I think what we have here and the ideas we have are
these.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I started on, like, what the boy could look like, and I think I'll have more questions potentially as I work, as I do sometimes, but I think where we are right now, I have like a whole world and society and stuff to kind of build off of in my head, so I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
This has been so fun to listen to you
This
guys
has
go
been
back and
just
forth.
a delight.
yeah.
This has been an absolute joy.
And you know what? Um, if you're hunting for a last name for the boy, Salt is a great last name.
Mm.
Um, um, uh, yeah. And I was trying to find a way. Yeah, I was thinking, names take a long time for me, so I'll happily.
Sure.
And here's what I'll say. Part of me is like, if you ever want to do a follow up, and I'm like, no. At this point, I should now, like, I should stop. I should say, and now I formally divest myself of this. It is now separate from me, and I'm releasing it into the world. I'm giving it to you to develop, so that I can keep my head clear and not keep getting drawn back into it, because I should make other things. Although I really wish. Oh, no, wait. The signifier should tie into the story of the boy. So, like either him catching the kid, or him catching the kid, or something about the ship that the kid took off
up
on.
against a chalk cliff, and they're covered in chalk.
Oh my God, the chalk! Yeah, I was gonna say, like, maybe even
by the end of it, the two of them are covered in off the cliff.
Like, or like, why couldn't they get these kids who are like, and it's like, well, maybe it was in caves, maybe it was in I'm like a briar, maybe it was in like a place that only kids can go, like a dense grove of holly trees, and but that would give you an iconography. But the chalk, maybe chalk cliffs, I would say, maybe.
Because you can smear that on yourself and it washes away later.
You could, and so, and like a white border around the flag. Even like, honestly, a white tattoo is hard to pull off, and so just maybe just an image, but it is white.
Yeah.
Would be something that would catch the eye far more than, and it's oddly not flashy in the way that like a vibrant tattoo would be, but it would still be different and intentional. And I would say the chalk is probably one of the legacy ships too. With the ship that he chased down and captured, is renamed the Chalk, and that's probably one of the family ships. Where and I like the thought that, ooh, how about this? Everyone thinks the kid died because it makes for a good story. And maybe even book encourage that story to go around. But he's also like, hey boy, like, you gotta go, because they're coming for me, and a way to get me is to get you, so congratulations, you were heroically killed defending me.
You just died.
And by the way, here's your ship, Captain Chalk. And yeah, and so he's still out there, and at this point he'd be 30, 40, but he would have known book, I love that he's out there and kinda nobody knows except so that, okay, now I'm done. I'm done.
This is the trilogy. Next.
Okay.
Pat, Julia, thank you so much. Julia, thank you so much for hosting. Thank you so much for this incredible art. Pat, thank you so much for being here. This has been an absolute joy. I'm fizzing with what we've got here.
I'll also say, if there's any intention to harvest this and drop it on a YouTube somewhere, let me know, and I'll either drop a link to it, or
Love it.
if nobody has a channel they want to do that too, we have a
We
channel.
do have a YouTube channel. Yeah, we'd love to put that up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll have it ready for whoever wants it. But thank you guys so much for being here and chatting. And
thank you, chat.
Yeah.
I can't look at the chat and feel like I give an honest, conversation, interview, whatever it is. My brain can't do that. But I'll read it back later. Thank you all so much for being here. This has been just an absolute joy.
Yeah. I'll see everybody later.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye bye.